Hello and welcome to the Catch a Lift Coaches Corner. I am Hale lead coach Melissa Leuck, and I am excited and honored to welcome U.S. Army veteran Aaron Hale to today's show. Aaron is a Hale veteran athlete and owner of EOD Fudge. Aaron, welcome to the Coaches Corner. It's great to
Thanks,
have
Melissa.
you. How are you
Thank you
doing?
very much. I'm
How
doing
are,
great.
Good. Let's jump right into it, Aaron. We have so much we want to talk to you about today. So I want to ask you right away. You started out as a Navy veteran, Aaron. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you ended up joining the Army and becoming EOD?
Yeah, that's a kind of a big transition going
Right.
from sailor cook to soldier bomb tech. But uh, truth is, I started off my career in the service because I loved cooking. Uh, I was cooking ever since I could reach over the countertop. So when it came to trying to pick a job, one, picking the service was pretty easy. The Navy has all the best duty stations in the world. They almost every one of their installations are near a beach, and so I chose the Navy. I wanted to go see the world, and I wanted to do it while doing what I loved the most was cooking. So joined the Navy as a mess management specialist, which later became culinary specialist because mess management specialist is a mouthful. Uh,
Yeah.
but about 8 years into it, I'd been stationed in Italy for 4 years. Made my way up to cooking for the commander of the Sixth Fleet, stationed in Gaeta, Italy.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's a fantastic duty, and it was actually pretty incredible. I got to tour in my free time, tour around uh, all over Europe. On with the ship, we're cruising with the admiral. We hit so many ports around the Mediterranean. So I did a lot of travel, a lot of excellent cooking. I loved it. However, the it was hardship duty. It was not. And by about 2004, both wars were in full swing, and it just kind of started feeling like I needed a new challenge. I wasn't really being challenged at this job, and I was enjoying it, but uh, I actually volunteered to deploy to Afghanistan as a Navy cook, running an Army chow hall. So I spent a year. I went from cooking for the admiral and 35 of his staff or so to um, running a DFAC
Oh,
in
my gosh.
Farah, Afghanistan, cooking for 600 and 700 ISAF troops.
Wow.
And while
Wow.
I was there, I met some EOD techs, um, and I, you I saw them with the bomb suits and the robots. They actually invited me out on a controlled detonation. They let me press the button, and man, I was sold. Uh, I learned about the tight knit brotherhood, the fact that they're first responders, and that they were saving lives on the battlefield. And just getting to blow things up was a perk too. So
Right.
by the reason I went because EOD, all the branches have EOD in them. So I first attempted to just go from Navy cook to Navy EOD tech,
Okay.
but um, my rank and rate was undermanned, which meant my position, my job, they didn't have enough in my job. So
Okay.
I wasn't gonna get promoted, and they weren't gonna let me cross over to another job.
Right.
Everything's waverable. Nobody wants to tell you. Um, but I let my contract run out, and then I went over to the Army. I gave them my service record, and I said, "Hey, I want to go EOD," and they just took a look at my record and said, "Welcome," and that's how it happened.
So it was easy as that. So the Navy contract ended, you switched over to Army. So once you became EOD, then Aaron in the Army, how long was it till you deployed again?
Minutes.
Yeah.
Uh, I switched over in 2008, and they were by then it was Afghanistan was very busy. Um, and they were adding big numbers to the EOD ranks. So they were pushing them through pretty quick. And I got to keep my rank from the Navy. So I was a sergeant, which was highly sought after in the EOD, among the EOD field.
Okay.
So as soon as I graduated from the schoolhouse, I went to Fort Drum and I joined a company that was already on the quote unquote road to war.
Okay.
And within a few months, I was in Iraq. And I did a short stint there, right there at Camp Victory, Camp Liberty. But unfortunately, I had a family emergency stateside, so I did emergency leave, and it ended up I ended up actually redeploying back home. So I didn't do a full tour in Iraq.
Okay.
I joined another company since my company was in Iraq for much longer. I switched to another company there at Drum, and about a year later, that company deployed to Afghanistan. So within a year of each other, I was in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow. Aaron, so for some of our listeners listening that that don't really have a concept of what EOD or what these bomb squad men do or what you did in service, could you kind of just walk us through a day or kind of like through a mission, like what you would do when you'd go out on a mission?
Absolutely. Well, EOD, or Explosive Ordnance Disposal, is the military's bomb squad. We're the first responders when it comes to anything that goes boom. So anything from bullets to landmines, grenades, all the way to weapons of mass destruction, chemical warfare, biological warfare, even nuclear weapons. That's all in our wheelhouse. Um, so when it came to on the battlefield in Afghanistan, it was IEDs. So almost, especially in our area of operation, almost everything we were running into was pressure plate IEDs with just like a oil jug full of um,
Oh, wow.
homemade
Yeah.
explosive connected to a 9-volt battery. So we'd be on a dismounted, a foot patrol, or driving, and the point would find maybe something with a metal detector, and they would call us up from the middle of the convoy, and we would go to work on it. We'd set a security cordon, and I would either send a robot to do initial inspection, or I would jump in the bomb suit if necessary and work on mitigating the hazard.
Okay.
Sometimes that just meant dropping a block of C4 on it and calling it a day. But most of the time, we wanted to try to safely disarm it so that we could, uh, you get the evidence collected
Right. Right.
and try to catch these bomb makers, bomb emplacers before they could do it again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Aaron, would you tell us about the day you were injured?
Sure. It was actually right as I returned from my 2 weeks of R&R. So I'd been in theater for just over 8 months of a 12-month uh, deployment. I got to go back home for 2 weeks, and while there, I was able to see my son turn 1. I got to visit with my family for Thanksgiving, and that was it's a fantastic last page in the photo
Right.
album.
Right.
Last great last entry because when I got back to Afghanistan, my team picked me up in our armored truck, our RAV, and our JERV, and then. Um, I threw the luggage on top of the robot in the back, and we got into a convoy. We're heading back out towards our command outpost and combat outpost. And while on the convoy commander calls back to us. He says, "EOD, there's an item ahead in the road that's been reported. Can you take care of it?" Well, of course, no time like the
Yeah.
present.
Yep.
So toss the luggage off the robot, toss the robot out the truck, and I got to work. Um, of course, uh, the robot found what we had been finding the whole time was a pressure plate with a jug and a 9-volt battery. The robot was able to separate and tear out the pressure plate,
Okay.
effectively rendering it safe. But it couldn't get the jug out of the hard packed dirt. That Afghan
Yeah.
moon
Yeah.
dust. That Afghan moon dust has is 3 states. It's like literally like moon dust. When it gets wet, it's slick as and sticky as snot. But then when it dries, it's as hard as concrete. So this jug was in there pretty good, and I wanted to get that evidence. So I jumped out of the truck. I had my regular protective gear on. I did not have the bomb suit on because my robot had rendered it safe. It would
Right.
have been
Right.
would have been overkill to get into the bomb suit. So I approached with my evidence collection kit and my metal detector, and I started approaching. And about 20 to 30 meters from the original device, a secondary device that hadn't yet been detected detonated nearby.
Oh,
Um, it punted me right into the air. I landed on my knees and elbows. I was still conscious, and the lights went out. So I thought originally that my helmet had gotten pushed over my face because
okay.
of the force of the blast.
Right. Right.
So the first thing was first. First thing first, I wiggled the fingers and the toes and did
Right.
elbows, knees, and did a
Yep.
functions check, and everything seemed to be serviceable. So I reached up to adjust my helmet, get back to work, and found that the helmet was gone. And that's when I thought, "Oh no, this is really bad."
Yeah.
You know, my first sergeant's going to want that back.
Yeah.
Uh, but then I realized that of course, there's definitely something wrong.
Yeah.
And so my team dragged me back to safety. The medics ran up from the cordon and um, checked me out. I was relatively untouched, virtually no damage, neck down.
Okay.
Everything it hit me. Actually, my family, guys in my family have really thick heads, so it was a perfect place to hit me. Um, but yeah, the blast had taken both of my eyes. It cracked my skull in a few places. I was leaking spinal fluid right out of my nose,
Oh my gosh.
blown out both my eardrums, and give me pretty good TBI.
Yeah.
So made it to Kandahar, then to Landstuhl, and then within 48 hours, I was at Walter Reed.
Aaron, what did the initial stages of your recovery look like when you got to Walter Reed? What did it look like right away for you, the recovery?
The recovery was it was fairly straightforward. I mean, they tried to save one of the eyes was completely gone. In fact, my right eye had been the eyelids had been fused together, but they tried to save the left eyeball and were unsuccessful. After that, there was just some burns and scrapes and stuff like that. So I was out of Walter Reed, I think, about 5 or 6 weeks.
Okay.
Um, they sent me to the TBI clinic at James A. Haley VA in Tampa for a couple weeks, but um, but I wasn't there for more than, I don't
Yeah.
think, 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then it was on to Augusta's VA, where they've got one of the country's 14 blind rehabilitation centers. And that's where I spent a better part of 6 months learning how to be blind, learning how to navigate with my cane, uh,
Okay.
all the accessibility tools like using talking iPhone and barcode scanners and uh,
Okay.
all those things.
Okay. At what point during this time, Aaron, did fitness come on the scene for you? When did fitness really, when did you find fitness?
Well, fitness was always important. However, first it was health. First it was recovery. So um, while I was at Walter Reed in Tampa, and for most of the time I was in Augusta, it was surgeries and learning how to be blind. There was physical therapy, but truth was, like I said, I hadn't been damaged from the neck down.
Right, right.
And the physical therapist said, I need, I'm here to help with recovering, patients. You don't need my help. So I was caught between like a rock and a hard place where
Yeah,
I wasn't getting a chance to work out, and the physical therapist didn't want to let me work out in the gym because I didn't need it. So um, I actually picked up quite a few pounds eating that hospital food, surprising enough. Um, and but while I was there, it was kind of funny. There was the recreational therapist there came into the room and asked me, "Would you want to go for a bike ride?" And I say, "Are you messing with me?"
yeah,
And
right,
I hadn't realized, I hadn't learned yet all that was available to me.
right.
And I thought he was kidding. Go for a bike ride. I'm blind. But I soon learned that tandem cycling is actually a pretty serious sport, and that it's even a Paralympic sport. One of the local Augusta bike shop owners does a Saturday bike ride, and he has has veterans from the rehabilitation center there, going for rides every day, every Saturday. So
That's terrific.
I
Yeah.
jumped on the back of his bike, and for a few weeks, every Saturday, I would go do like a 35, 36 mile ride with him. And that got me back on the path for
Okay.
fitness. But it wasn't until I left the hospital, I moved down to Florida, um, back to Eglin Air Force Base, where I started instructing while I was awaiting my med board. Um, I started instructing at the schoolhouse, so I was back in the EOD job again.
Okay.
And every morning, I would go for a run with uh, one of my buddies, and that was it was one of the easiest things to do. You can lace up and you can just hit the road. Uh, and we would try, from time to time we'd get into the gym, and that's how fitness got started.
So you brought up running there at the end, Aaron, and I wanted to touch on this with you. So, and even we can apply it to all of it, like the bike riding tandem, the running with a guide person. What was that process like with you, as a blind athlete to learn to run with a guide? I mean, was this a process like where you had to, learn how to actually run with someone in that way, or, do the tandem biking? How was that process like, being with another person, like a guide person for your athletics?
Well, thankfully, in the military, we are very comfortable in placing our lives in our brothers and sisters' hands.
That's true.
We have to be. So when it came to getting out on the road and not being able to see the traffic, and just completely trusting my guide not to get me run over,
Right.
thankfully, been through that situation. It was just, my comrades not getting me shot. Um, However, there was a little bit of a learning curve. Uh, I had to look up how to get this. How do we do this? Is it
Right.
actually? What are the tactics here? So I was reading on different blogs and forums that uh, people were using just a tether. One person holds one end, and the guide holds the other end, and people were using anything from towels to t-shirts to whatever. And my my friend first developed. He just grabbed some 550 cord, and
Okay.
he would tie a knot in either end of this like 3 feet of 550 cord. I thought it's a little bit long, but let's give it a try. And what happened was this weird accordion thing where if there was slack in the 550 cord, I thought he was coming to me. So I would go left or go right,
Yeah.
and then if it would go taut, I think he was turning left. So I would turn and just crash right into him. So he started balling it up until there was no slack at all, and our knuckles were touching. And then, of course, it looked like two grown men and PTs were holding hands.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Wow.
anyways, I figured out, and I found for the longest time I started using a one of those dog toys, just a dog tug of war rope.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Two knots. It was solid enough and sturdy enough that it wouldn't flex or bow, and I could get all my cues from that. And then
Okay.
it was just my guide's responsibility to let me know when there was a curb or a speed bump or an open manhole cover, uh, and that was it. Then we just step off.
So when you're working, or when you're running with your guide like that and say there is, a pothole or something up ahead or you're approaching a curve, what does your guide do? Is it all done by feeling like with what you're holding or is it verbal? How do you guys actually navigate that?
Well, hopefully my guide gets us all the way around an open manhole, but
Okay.
that's it's part of the cues with the rope. If my guide just tugs up on the rope, it's almost like a marionette string. I'll know to high step it a little bit, so my knee comes
Okay.
up too. It's almost now instinctual.
Right. Right. That's so fascinating, Aaron. I want to keep talking. I want to talk a little bit more about, your running. You're a quite accomplished runner, marathons, ultra marathons. I don't even honestly know where to start with that, Aaron. Um, you've completed the Boston Marathon twice. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What was it?
Well,
What was it like to compete and run that Boston Marathon and your marathons? I mean,
it's all been absolutely incredible, and the truth is, running was a way to stay fit, and it was the easiest thing to get up and do. All I had to do was find somebody to go running with or a treadmill. But the truth was, my first fascination or my first goal was to go mountain climbing, and I was just running. I was just running to stay fit, of course, because it's really hard to find a decent peak in Florida.
yeah.
But I was running every day, and I was talking to another blind soldier, Ivan Castro, who is an accomplished runner and cyclist and all sorts of other things. But he said he just threw this idea in my head. He said every year he tries to make it a point to run the Air Force Marathon, the Army 10 miler, and um, the Marine Corps Marathon. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to do that too. Before
That's
having ever
awesome. Oh my gosh, I love it.
before having ever run a single marathon, I signed up for all three of them. And then somebody suggested maybe I run something local, and I signed up. I registered for the Pensacola Marathon, and then I don't even know how, but somebody just invited me to do the San Antonio rock and roll marathon. And before I knew it, I was registered for 5 races
Oh
in
my
4 months. And I was registered for 4 marathons and a 10 miler within the span of 4 months.
Wow.
So I had a pretty lofty goal, and um, it it was in 3 of those 4 marathons all qualified me for the Boston Marathon, and
Okay.
this was in the marathons I ran in 2014. Then I ran Boston in 2015.
Okay.
Uh, Also in 2015, I climbed 3 14,000-foot peaks in Colorado
Oh,
in
oh my gosh.
in a day.
In a
I
day.
I hunted that guy behind me, and I kayaked some white water in Montana. So things were flying pretty high in 2000, the early spring, summer 2015. But in September uh, is when I contracted bacterial meningitis, and I was nearly, I was right back in the hospital. I was nearly killed again. This time, the bacteria or the heavy doses of antibiotics stole what was left of my hearing and left me without my vestibular balance, my inner ear balance.
Ugh.
So after a few weeks of recovery in the hospital, I was back at home, and I'm now totally deaf, totally blind, and my whole world has ended at the ends of my fingertips. It was like I was trapped in my body, and running actually became again a means for fitness, a means to just have something to do to
Right.
get out of my head.
Right.
Um, I mean, I started cooking again and started the chocolate business, but I was feeling pretty down on myself. And for almost 4 years, I'd been speaking across the country, telling people about triumph over tragedy, success through struggle, because of the struggle and the hardship. And there I was, I guess, said, "Prove it." Somebody, the powers that be said, "Let's do it again." And I couldn't feel sorry for myself. So I got back on the treadmill, and because of the balance thing, it felt like every step I took, somebody was trying to rip it out from under me.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
those the trekking poles that I was using in the mountains,
Yep.
I was using when I got out of the wheelchair. I was using those just to get down to uh, the mailbox and back. So it was a long road to recovery, but I'd gotten enough strength and enough of my balance back that in 2016 I ran my first marathon after the meningitis. It was my hometown marathon in Akron. It was also my 20th high school reunion,
Oh wow.
and I PR'd.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
and qualified for Boston again.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. Um, so you recently completed an ultra marathon. I mean, that's just absolutely incredible. Could you tell us a little bit about the experience of completing an ultra marathon?
Well, similar to every accomplishment in life, everything looks really difficult until you reach the peak or the finish line. You think, well, that was tough, but I did it. And once you get to the peak of one summit, you can see all the other summits, or you can see the next level up. And I ran a marathon, then I ran a 12-hour race in 2017 and made it about 50.6 miles.
Okay.
And it was hard, but I realized I learned that I could do it. And it shifted my mindset to where even like marathons became a little bit easier. Now
Okay.
I could run 50 miles, and now the big goal was let's go do a 100 miler. And I got to tell you, through all of these, everything I do, even individual accomplishments, they've become a team sport.
Yeah.
So in 2000, what was it, 2016, when I ran the Akron Marathon, I hooked up with the Team Red, White, and Blue chapter in Akron, and they sent a whole bunch of Eagles out to. I just said, "Hey, can you hook me up with somebody that could guide me for the race?" And they sent like 10 people. So I had like this I had this bipedal peloton of runners.
Yeah.
One guy was like a halfback running up ahead, blind runner coming through.
Jeez.
Anyways, my guide for almost the entire thing was a guy named Bob Moore, a former Marine, and he and I ran the Akron Marathon to my PR. So when I was trying to decide my next ultra marathon, my first 100, they there was a marathon right in Akron, the Canal Corridor, um, and I asked Bob if he wanted to run with me, and he said, "Awesome, let's do it." So uh, I started training, and I did almost all of my training on the treadmill, especially since this year, the quarantine and the COVID-19, social distancing,
Right.
everybody's kind of staying away from each other.
Yeah.
So thank goodness the canal corridor is mostly, it's almost all completely flat and paved at one extent or another. So it's an easier one. No 100 miler race is
Well,
easy,
yeah, I was
but
gonna say,
it was an
yeah, we'll
easier
we'll
one.
use we'll use the word
Easier
easy
one to cut
very
my teeth
loosely
on.
here.
Yeah. So that's how I ran it, and we paced ourselves, and in a little over 29 hours, I completed my first 100 mile marathon.
It's absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Um, when you were training for the ultra, in a typical week, Aaron, mileage wise, what would you be running? And I know that would be different depending where you were in your training cycle, but I mean, just kind of average. What were you putting in mileage wise in a week?
Well, I also signed up for this thing called the Great Virtual Race Across Tennessee, and it was 1,000 kilometers in 4 months. Actually, it's still going on, I think. But um, I decided I wanted to do the down and back, so 2,000 kilometers in 4 months. So that works out to about a half marathon every single day.
Wow.
So
Wow, wow.
I was averaging around 96 miles a week.
Okay.
96 to 100. I would do uh 13 to 17 miles a day. I'd have 2 easy days, and then I'd do like a 30-mile long run day.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. So the outdoors have obviously been a very large part of your recovery, running the fitness outside like that, the mountain climbing, the kayaking, the biking, the different stuff that you've done. How how would you say that you've found peace in the outdoors, or is it safe to say that you have found peace in the outdoors?
Absolutely. One, there is something about getting out of your home, getting away from the flat screens,
Yeah.
um, and experiencing life. There's a whole world out there, and I love to explore. I love to travel, um, and when you go visit a foreign country or whatever, you eat, you drink, and you shop, or you go look at museums. But when you get out to the wilderness, it's quiet. Um, I explore my world through my feet, through my hands. I get to feel the crispness of the air at the top of the mountain. Um, and then it's about doing the work because
Yeah.
these things aren't easy. You got to
No.
put in the effort to get to the top of the mountain. You got to put in the effort to get to the finish line of a 100-mile race. And um, but like I said, it's a team sport too. And you don't have to. I mean, if you, I mean, I have to have a team,
Right.
but everybody else can have a team, and you don't have to do it alone. So climbing a mountain with people, you get to a shared accomplishment is one of the most fulfilling feelings that you can experience.
Oh,
Now,
absolutely.
so there's the joy of giving value to somebody else, and there's the power in a shared accomplishment. So every one of these things, I can't cross the finish line by myself. And I don't think I'd ever want to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. I love the aspect. Like you said, anybody, you can do it as a team. You don't have to do it by yourself like that. That's absolutely wonderful. Aaron, we want to talk to you about your wonderful business, EOD Fudge. And I know that came about, at obviously a very difficult time, after the meningitis and losing your hearing. Could you talk to us a bit about, kind of how EOD Fudge started, being back in the kitchen, and just kind of how it took off from there?
Sure. Uh, well, like I said, after I gotten out of the hospital, I was still recovering. Um, it was like I was in sensory deprivation.
Oh my
No
gosh.
eyesight. It was totally black, totally silent. Um,
I
all
can't
I
even
had my
imagine. I can't imagine that, you
Yeah,
know.
all I had were my thoughts to keep me uh, busy, and they weren't very pleasant at that
Right.
time. So um, I was sitting there at the counter of my kitchen, and was trying to figure. I was feeling down. I was feeling sorry for myself. I was trying to figure out how I could turn this around. And one of the best methods I found for um, getting out of the dark place, no pun intended,
Yeah.
was besides the physical activity, which was difficult for me
Hmm.
with the balance and whatnot, was one of the other things is focusing on others. Taking stop thinking about the
Yeah.
situation. And I mean, there's nothing I could do about my physical well-being right at that moment. I was waiting for the cochlear implants because I had to wait till the infection was totally cleared. Then I had to get the surgery, and I started on this side because I was both these ears are turned off. And this ear actually had more damage than this one. And what
Okay.
happened was I got the surgery, had to wait a few weeks for the surgical site to heal up. Then they put the processor on. Then it was a series of tunings to make sure I could hear. It
Right.
was actually, and I do this one first, and then I do this one. And it was actually, they found out that there was too much damage in my inner ear workings, and the implant didn't work at all. So it was over 6 months where I was shut off from the
Yeah.
outside world. My wife was writing every letter of every word in the palm of my hand to communicate with me for 6 months, for half a year. I figured at this time it would have been a great idea to learn Braille, but before then, I had all this technology, talking computers, talking phones. I had
Right.
scanners. I could take
Right.
a picture of something and it could read to me. A podcast, audiobooks, all of it silenced. So there I was sitting at the counter, feeling down for myself, and I did what anybody in my situation would have done: started a chocolate company. Um, well,
I love
the holidays were coming, and we invited the whole family, everybody, all the corners of the United States. They were going to have a feast in our house. Uh, this Thanksgiving was going to be one to remember. And I started weeks in advance, and I figured out that I could still cook. I mean, that the first passion of
Yep.
mine, I could just by memory
Oh
and
my gosh.
feel I could still cook. So weeks in advance, I was starting to make all um, these desserts, cakes, and pies, and cookies, and started making fudge. All this fudge, I make batch after batch. The next one, I would throw like nuts, and then I'd do the spices. I go in the liquor cabinet, and I'm like,
Yeah,
and
totally.
I would just it was I was being allowed to be creative, and
Right,
I was
right.
having fun. And my wife noticed two things. One, that there was something on me that she saw that she hadn't seen in 6 months. It was a smile.
Oh my gosh.
I was actually smiling again,
Yeah.
and she noticed that the fudge was piling up. More, I made more fudge than any size family could do in one holiday. So she started sneaking it out the front door. And I say sneaking like you got to be real stealthy around a blind deaf guy.
Jeez.
But
Uh,
she was giving it to friends and neighbors, and people started coming back and saying, can we buy more of this from you? We got a birthday, a bar
yep.
mitzvah, whatever, a shower." And the capitalist in me said, "Well, of course you may."
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, a business was started, and we called it Extraordinary Delights, or EOD Confections. And it was a little tip nod of the head, the tip of the cap to my former
Yep.
job of explosive ordnance disposal. Now EOD stood for Extraordinary Delights. And before we knew it, we'd created this business, and we were working all day long. We got started getting corporate orders from Boeing and other companies, and
Oh my
um,
gosh.
it just started taking off. So yeah, it's actually very surprising, and the growth and the popularity, the brand is becoming it's becoming amazing just to watch and um, see where it goes.
That's absolutely phenomenal. Phenomenal. Aaron, for anybody listening that would like to order, fudge or any of your other delicious things you make, how can we go about ordering from you?
Absolutely. Well, you can look at all of our creations at eodconfections dot or sorry, eodfudge.com, and they can follow us on all the social media pages at EOD Confections.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So I have one more question I want to ask you here, Aaron. Um, you lead an an extraordinary life. You're a husband, you're a father, you have a 9-year-old son, you have twin 1-year-old boys. You've got, business, you're an entrepreneur, you're a very accomplished athlete across the board. How do you balance all this? How do you balance, family, training for your various things, and the business?
Well, of course, like I say, everything should be a team sport, and I've got an incredible wife, uh, and we work very well together to balance home and business. And I also recommend uh, reading the book, Miracle Morning, which helps me stay organized and get on track early in the morning.
Okay.
Also involves a good, healthy routine, but it's just staying organized and writing down your goals. I use some various apps that um, keep me on track, and besides all of that, it's just keeping a positive attitude about everything. Um, the more I can do for others, the more energy it gives me to do more.
Yeah. Wow, Aaron, I think that's a great place for us to stop this week. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us, your story, and your spirit. Just thank you so much.
You're very
Absolutely
welcome.
I'm honored. I'm honored to talk with you today, and thank you again for giving us this time. All right, everybody. That's going to be it for this week's episode of Coach's Corner. We'll be back next Wednesday at 1 Eastern time with another episode. Thank you again, Aaron, so much for spending this time and sharing with us. If there are any veteran members that are watching right now that would like to hop on with Aaron and I to talk for a few minutes, just leave your name in the chat box and we'll get you guys on. We want to give a big thank you to ID Technologies for all their continued support of Catch a Lift Fund website, Landing Zone, our podcast. Thank you to Lynn and the entire Catch a Lift team. Without you, this would not be possible. And thank you to all of our listeners. Until next week, keep it real and stay Hale strong.